and welcome to a Monday morning mailbag on a Tuesday afternoon. This is the Walk Off. I'm Scott Belford, joined as always by the best co-host in the biz, Adam Mack. And let me tell you, man, we may have struck a few chords on Friday's episode. There were some fiery comments, I would say. I know most of that episode wound up being us talking about how we don't really think the Blue Jays should be used in the Juan Soto sweepstakes, and that they should have a very viable plan B already lined up well before they go in. And some people liked it, some people hated it, some people thought we were too negative, and some people thought we were hilarious. Those of you who thought we were hilarious, just extra marks to you. I always like reading when people are like, that show is great, laughed lots. So as we go through the comments, you're going to see that I stacked the positive ones on top, and then we get more and more negative as we go down the show. But always appreciate hearing from all of you. The grounds crew, feel free to leave your messages and comments right here on YouTube. You can DM us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast, and a extra thank you, a nod and a bow, if you will, to our Patreon members. Could not run the channel without you, and for supporting us in the fashion that you do. You get bonus content, you get instant access to all of our interviews, and of course, what we call the Patreon bump, where you automatically get your questions and comments into the mailbag. So we've got lots to get to here. YouTube was happening, so we're trying to get to as many YouTube questions and comments as possible. We'll see how far we get into this, though. We don't need a 2-hour mailbag, but we'll do our best to get everyone's in here. We're going to start with Twitter. This is from Trevor. He said, laughed my ass off listening to the show today. In parenthesis, he has the most obvious statement ever, and then a laughing emoji. Of course, he's responding to our comments about John Heyman coming out and saying that he's heard from Blue Jays executives that they feel that Juan Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the middle of the Blue Jays order would be just as great and productive as Judge and Soto, to which, I mean, could you make a more safe statement? Like, honestly, Adam, even if Heyman's lying.
I know.
It's like, if you go to a Blue Jays executive and you're like, would they be great? Like, what? Of course, obviously.
It's wild.
So Trevor goes on here. He's like, Vladdy wants a lot. We ain't getting Vlad, guys. I'm sure it's being considered, but it's a fuck ton. Very unlikely. I would have rather we dealt him this past deadline for max value. The model of signing one player just doesn't work. And then he brings up Miguel Cabrera, so Miggy, Pujols, Soto. We had Green, we had Delgado, Clemens, Holiday. Mind you, not in a 3 wildcard era, but still. This front office is making us engage in crazy talk because they can't fucking draft and develop. I don't think Trevor's alone on some of these sentiments. There is definitely a frustration with the front office that has... I mean, let's be serious here. It's reached a boiling point. Most folks are frustrated with Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro at this point. And if they're not, the other side is at least frustrated with all of the complaints about Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins. So it is at a boiling point with this front office. There's a real argument to be made about the signing one player. What do you think, Adam? Do you think that if they go all out on Vladdy, that this team can build around him? I mean, Trevor kind of brings it up here that this front office is making us engage in crazy talk because they can't draft and develop. So it does feel like if they do go all out on Vladdy and sign him long term, you would need to cross your fingers that drafting and development improves, right? Like, there's got to be a max number on what they can spend in 1 year. Like, I don't really know how to address this.
Like, are you saying if we sign Vladdy to an extension this off season, that takes us out of any other big free agent?
I'm not saying it, but I do feel like maybe that's what Trevor is feeling like here, that if they do go with a $300 million contract, and it doesn't even need to be Vladdy. Let's just say it's anyone in that realm. Is there the resources within this organization to build around it?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a 2 to 3 star team. Like we've got dead weight in George Springer.
Hmm.
Once that money's off the books, there's zero reason we can't spend that better somewhere else, right?
I agree.
Like we have an expensive pitching staff. Like I guess relative to what some of the contracts are, like sure you can go up. Oh, Gossman, that sure looks like a steal compared to Rodon, or like whatever. Sure, like we can you can have some of those conversations, but I mean it's not like we're currently nickel and diming our roster together because we
No.
have one big George Springer contract. Like this
I
is
think this is where this sentiment is coming from, Adam, is that a lot of people feel like we're kind of maxed out with the budget that they're at right now. So it's
Mhm.
like in the future, will the Blue Jays continue to spend $250 million on this team? It is likely. Now, how much of that pie is going to be taken by a mega deal and how much is left to spread around? I mean, I guess you need to kind of wait and see there. But if it is under the same restrictions, you do get a little tighter. Not that this isn't a problem that every team is dealing with, and the fact that the Blue Jays were the eighth highest spending team in baseball this year. I mean, they're part of the haves, right? Like they're not a have-not team.
yeah, like I just like yeah, we're not 180 million is our cap. And if we give 30 a year of that to Vladdy, we only have 150 to fill the other 25
25
spots.
roster
So
spots.
this is definitely like, I mean, even as is, like, whatever, you could say what you want about Chris Bassett and what's, is he getting old or like Gossman on the wrong side of 30, his numbers are dropping. Like, sure, we could point to these things, but like Gossman, 22 million this year, Bassett, 22 million, Burrios, 17 million, George Springer, 24 million. Like, we're at $100 million in those four guys.
Mm-hmm.
There's money to pay Vlad and still have an ace and one other superstar around him. Like, but then yeah, like, do you need some prospects to pan out, like, or develop? Like, sure, but that, like you said, is the problem every team faces. So that's not like, I just don't know how we can be a top 5 payroll in baseball, within percentage points of being number one. And if the Dodgers can afford Teoscar and Shohei and Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts, Bueller, like I don't know how why don't we think the Jays can do it?
Yeah.
Like
It's the lack of
it's not,
confidence in this front office because
I know,
you
but
do.
the numbers just here's my toxic positivity. I know we have a question coming up
Yeah,
about like can you guys be
it is the
toxically
next question.
positive?
Yeah.
So like here it is the Dodgers, how much bigger than us is their payroll?
Here, why don't you bring it up? Bring that up
Okay,
right now,
I'll
and I
actually
will
look it up.
read this.
Okay,
I will read this
okay.
question because it fits in perfectly here. So Stephanie reached out on Twitter. You can always reach out at Walk Off Podcast on Twitter. Hey guys, great show on Friday. Laughed out loud numerous times. Again, I stack piled the compliments on
Mhm.
top here.
Oh
I
boy.
will say you guys aren't giving me a lot of hope. It might be time for some of that classic toxic positivity. Can both of you guys give us a few reasons why this team might be just fine next year? Why contending could be possible? So thank you, Stephanie. Always appreciate you folks reaching out. So yeah, where are we
Okay,
at?
so Mets and Yankees are both absurd. It's 305 and 303 for the Mets and Yankees. Now, this
The
is
underdog Mets.
this is from a USA Today article from April 3rd, 2024. Okay, so this is start of year. I know if we look at the Blue Jays payroll at the end of the year, it's lower because we shed payroll and whatever. But I think going into the
When you sell
season,
at the deadline,
where
you
our
can do that. Yeah.
intentions were and blah, 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 I think is a more accurate representation of what the reality of our circumstances are. So Dodgers were third at 249 million. Phillies at 243, Astros 236, Rangers 223. Blue Jays were seventh in baseball at 221. We were $28 million less than the Dodgers. Like, okay,
So
one
one
less
contract.
superstar?
Yeah, one guy, Teoscar
Like,
Hernandez, pretty much.
right. So, like, that's the thing. It's like, it's not like the Dodgers are about to steamroll the Mets. Well, I know the Mets won yesterday, but like, they're a few games away from where they want to be.
Hmm.
But it's not like Mookie Betts is still in his pre-arb years. You know,
Yeah,
like it's not like I mean, they have some of those guys too, but like they spent on, Freddie Freeman has a full paycheck. Betts, full paycheck. Teoscar, full paycheck. Shohei, full paycheck. I mean, you can argue there was creative accounting with Shohei, but like, okay, but he's also like an exception and is still getting paid very well, even with the
hmm,
creative accounting. So
yeah.
there's just there's no way you go, oh yeah, we have a 4% smaller payroll than the third biggest payroll in baseball, but we can only afford one superstar. And if we give Vladdy 35 million, I don't know what he gets, but just that. Oh, now we can't afford to put anything else around him, and we're gonna need all these prospects to pay off. Like, yeah, we'll need like, a Manoah to come out of somewhere, a Tiedemann to become healthy again. Like, you know, I just don't buy the negativity budget wise. Now, if you want to say that like Ross Atkins isn't the right guy to develop players or whatever, I'll listen to that conversation. But from a if we spend on Vladdy, we're screwed. Like I just don't buy it.
I
The numbers
think
don't back that up.
I think it's a worry of overspending, but I agree. I do think that there should be enough room and the ability within this front office to get creative in the ways that they need to add more talent to this team, which is something that Kevin Gosman brought up closer to the end of the year, where he was like, "Yes, like it would be nice if there were." I'm paraphrasing here, by the way, but basically his sentiment
Mhm.
was a few more superstars would go a long way in this roster. And I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, I know that this is a team that has been lacking a legitimate middle of the order cleanup guy since Teoscar left. And that is something
Mhm.
that definitely needs to be addressed. So I'm going to readdress what Stephanie was saying about some toxic positivity. I will say this about the 2025 Blue Jays: Vladimir
Mhm.
Guerrero Jr. is an exceptional talent who is 25 going on 26 years old. Have we seen the best of him? We might not even have, which is absolutely
Mhm.
insane. Bo Bichette literally cannot be worse than he was in 2024. And I think we're going to see far more of what we saw from him in 2022, 2021. And he's going to come into spring training, I guaranteed, the most motivated he has ever been in his entire career. There's a mega payday on the line for him. He is in his final year of
Mhm.
contractual obligation with the Blue Jays. And if he'd like to get paid as a premium shortstop, he's got to start playing like he's a premium shortstop. So, again, I don't think that he can be any worse than he was last year for us. So that means that there's very likely internal, everyone's favorite word here, positive regression, right?
Mhm.
I think that Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins backs are against the wall a little bit here. Ross Atkins in particular, there is no way where I think that another failure like this, there's no way he can survive again. I mean,
Mhm.
I said this going into 2024, so I could be so full of shit here.
Mhm.
But I do like to think that they're going to really try to address these problems that they maybe ignored and said weren't problems going into this year. We're going to see them go out and get some power home run guys. I really do believe that. And the final bit of positivity here, it's fucking baseball. Like, there's the third wild card. crazy stuff happens all the time. We just watched it with the Detroit Tigers. We're watching it right now with the New York Mets. Teams
Yeah.
that maybe should not exceed all the time. Teams that are supposed to excel have years like the Blue Jays had. So if we're going to put a silver lining on this 2025 Blue Jays team, my silver lining is it can't be as bad as this year. It just can't.
Yeah, I mean, mathematically, I feel like we're at the bottom of worst case scenario. I guess worst case could have been Vladdy also didn't have a good year, and none of our AAA guys rose up.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, if we had to do like an over-under on wins this upcoming season versus this previous season, you have to take the over.
Mm-hmm.
It just can't get worse. I'm still not sure Bo is here,
And that's
but
fair.
I'm seeing
This
all
off
sorts
season
of
is going to be so interesting, man. There is
yeah.
some really intriguing pathways that could be taken here, and it's going to be interesting to see how creative and off the beaten path this front office goes. I know that there's not
Mhm.
to shoot ahead here, but I know that there's a comment where yeah, that they missed out on Shohei. What did you guys want after that? Like the free agent class wasn't very good, which is true. But my problem is that this front office better get creative this year. Like just because the only thing they're choosing from doesn't need to be the free agent class. Right, there is
Mhm.
going to be teams out there with guys on it that could plug holes on this team, and there is a surplus of major league ready infielders and outfielders on this team that there just isn't going
Mhm.
to be playing time for. So you're going to need to package some of that. How much can you get for a Leo Jimenez? I'm just using his name as an example. Will
Mhm.
Wagner, Joey Loperfido, whatever, put whatever young name in there that you want, right? Any of these 25-year-olds that got their
Mhm.
major league debuts this year with this team, or, or I know Loperfido debuted with the Astros before this. But you guys get what I'm saying here, right? So there is a pathway to augmenting this team using some of the trade bait that they have acquired from sucking in 2024 and needing to be sellers at the deadline.
Yep.
All right, last question on Twitter before we move on to Patreon. This is from Abdullah who DM'd us. He said, I want to move past the Teoscar Hernandez trade so bad, guys. I want that trade to be like COVID. Sure, it's still out there, but at least everyone's pretending it doesn't affect anything. But damn it, he's making it hard to act like he wouldn't be great on this Jays team still. The comment
Yeah,
made me laugh, and that's why I got into mailbag. I
great
was just like,
analogy.
yeah, it's just I want that too. Wouldn't it be nice to not constantly have Teoscar Hernandez rub our face in it? I love the guy, by the way, and all the power to him. He's kicking butt with the Dodgers. He's hitting with runners
Yep.
in scoring position. He's hitting power. He's being a playoff performer. Everything that we would have wanted for him in a Blue Jays uniform. What we saw in that game two of the Seattle series, right, where he hit two dingers before the team completely collapsed and Bo and Springer had their collision and
Yeah.
changed the trajectory of the front office to put us on this pitching and defense path. But
Yeah, I mean that's one move that like I have to say I got to eat crow on too because
yeah,
I
I didn't think it was
when
that big of a
we
deal.
made the move I was like on board like we were in a position where yeah, it felt like we had to
An
make
excess of
some
bats,
moves
needed
and
bullpen help.
I felt like
Adam
he was on the
Macko
wrong
looked like a
side
good
of
prospect. Yeah.
30 and I didn't think his numbers would continue at all. Like I thought he kind of came out of nowhere offensively and has continued to ascend
Mm-hmm.
statistically. And I really did not think. I truly thought if we kept Teoscar around, we would have to pay him, and then we would be in the situation we're in with George Springer right now.
Yeah.
I truly thought that, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
So, or have been so far. But I don't know.
Yeah. So I have another Teoscar comment here. This one's from Patreon from Philip. I had titled our Patreon version of the Friday show. Adam's not having any of it. So Philip wrote LOL or perhaps it's Adam being tired of Joel LaFlamme talking about Teoscar Hernandez trade. Joel, my brother, it is painful, that's for sure. Watching the Dodgers in the NLCS and the clutch hitting from Hernandez really does feel like you were stung by a bee in the eyeball. If Mark
Mhm.
Shapiro's only worth has been stadium renovations, because if we had Hernandez, we were in the ALCS, I would have settled for the mistake by the lake. A, a question for Adam and Scott. Do you think there is any chance Hernandez will be brought back by this front office regime? You guys are the best podcast aside from Blair and Barker, so thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm so tired of those other
Tupac.
clickbait clowns coming up with the most absurd YouTube cover and thumbnails art just to generate clicks, which, by the way, I will push back a little bit here, Philip. You obviously didn't see our beautifully done thumbnail where Adam took took Leonardo DiCaprio's face and superimposed Mark Shapiro on it, and then superimposed Ross Atkins'
Oh
face
man, I'm
onto
proud of that one.
Kate Winslet's face, and then we called it what was it?
Was it
Continuity is an
continuity is an
iceberg.
iceberg? Yeah, I was proud of that one.
um, Talking about some random Twitter dude posting some gibberish, and they bring it on to you like it's breaking news. Scott and Adam, keep doing what you boys are doing. You're the
Thank
best.
you.
So yeah, thank
Appreciate
you very
it.
much, Philip. I'm glad you
Yeah.
enjoy it. We're just a couple of boneheads.
I wish
We
the
like to get
algorithm
goofy.
felt as strongly as Philip
Yes,
did.
I do like
Because
that
the
the things
clickbait
we get
works.
compliment the things we get complimented for, Adam, is always like, you guys are so good at being bad at being good on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are awesome at not being good at what you do.
Yeah, the things that would blow your channel up, you're really good at not doing, and we
Yeah.
appreciate it. But
Yeah.
honestly,
Perfect.
Patreon, we any all the kind words, we do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, so Teoscar Hernandez, free agent, end of 2024 here.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any way that the front office brings him back? He's still a fit. I mean, there is a need for power and a cleanup hitter that would look pretty
Yeah,
good.
it totally is.
I've said this
Yeah, I mean,
before. I really do feel like this front office has a little bit of an ego to it.
mhm.
And bringing Teoscar back would, in some way, kind of
Admit mistakes.
admit mistakes.
Yep.
And I
I
think that they
agree.
would rather go out and spend more money on less production, like an Anthony Santander,
Yeah.
than bring back Teoscar and have that blemish on,
You're
especially if it
probably
works. Like,
exactly
especially
right
if it
about that.
works, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If there is, if you had a crystal ball in Ross Atkins' office and he goes, okay, we can spend 24 million on Teoscar and it'll get us 35 home runs this year. Or we can get 28 home runs from Santander or other non-named
Yes.
Teoscar Hernandez. Um, Whatever we got to pay, let's do that instead. Like even if it's more money, if it's an extra $1 million and seven less home runs, I
Yeah.
think he would take that over the acknowledgement of
By the
the
way, for
miss.
everyone frantically commenting here to point out that Santander had more home runs than Teoscar this year, I'm aware of it. My point stands that the
Yep.
ego on this front office, they would rather fewer home runs. Put in whatever name you think will hit fewer home runs than Teoscar Hernandez next year and use that as the
Yep.
example if you don't like Anthony Santander there. But
Yep.
I do think that Ross and Mark, and I've brought this up before, we have very informed folks come on the show, very informed folks who have done Baseball Town, our live show, who have vocally said this team would rather pick up a pitcher off the waiver wire and make it work and look smart than pay $10 million for a sure thing. So
Yep.
just keep that in mind with stuff like Teoscar. I would love to see them bring back Teo, especially on a reasonable deal. I mean, he is coming up on
Yep.
32 now. He's 32 now, I think. We can double check that maybe if you want to give it a quick Google here, Adam. But,
Mhm.
Teoscar on a 3-year deal, I'm all for. Teoscar on a 5. I don't know what the market for Teo's going to be this season, but if he's coming off a World Series ring,
Um, Happy birthday, Teoscar Hernandez.
no way.
32 years old today.
Huh, crazy.
Yeah,
Happy
I
birthday, Teo. There you go. All
I had
right.
to double check that. October 15th, 1992. There you go.
Wow, wild. Okay, moving on. Another Patreon comment here. This one is from MLB Mondays, which, by the way, we do bonus content every single Monday called MLB Mondays, where Adam and we normally wind up talking the Blue Jays a little bit, but then we do kind of go around the league and give our comments there. And we were just talking about Shohei Ohtani and kind of the hate that he has been getting lately because he is such a star and
Mhm.
the network does push him, right? Like you were saying
Yeah.
yesterday, Adam, where you're like, oh, Otani bats in six hitters, so it
Hmm.
is a little
Yeah.
annoying that way. But I called it the Nickelback syndrome, right? Where like whenever you get too high,
Yep.
people are gonna hate on you,
Knock you
and
down.
so
Yep.
Deb just kind of went ha 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 Nickelback syndrome. So
It's good.
Mish goes, it's funny that they don't do that with other teams' superstars during the broadcast. Again, talking about Otani here. I don't know if there's another star that has the appeal, though. Am I being silly
Aaron
here?
Judge could.
Aaron Judge? But I mean, I watch enough Yankees to know, like, it's not like Aaron Judge is getting zero time. Like, they talk about him all the time.
Yeah, I don't know. Vlad doesn't get it in Toronto. I like when
It's
I'm
true.
thinking Aaron Judge, I'm thinking, okay, but is he head and shoulders above anybody else on that team? Like, if I'm a Yankees fan, am I more excited for Judge to come up or more excited for Soto to come up?
Hmm.
You know?
I mean, you can
Whereas,
say the
whereas
same,
like
you can do the same narrative, Adam, there with Betts and Freeman, right? Like,
they are not on the Otani hype level, though, I don't
no, not the
think.
hype level. Absolutely not. No one's on the Otani hype level.
Right. But then like maybe if you look at like the Blue Jays, where you go, okay, well, it was pretty top heavy this year with Vladdy beating the hell out of the ball
Hmm.
and nobody else really doing much. If this team was competitive, like still somehow nickel and diming their way to victories, if we were in the playoffs, we'd be like, oh, six more batters till Vladdy comes up. Like, I don't know if that's so. Yeah, it does. Like, I don't like it about Shohei. I think he's overrated. I think he's the best player in baseball, but he's overrated.
Okay. Put it on a shirt. All right. Joey Schatz in Patreon commented on our MLB Mondays as well. We were just talking about
Mm.
J Ram and how Jose Ramirez has been so good, and that you know you kind of made an off the cuff comment about we were so close. I still can't believe that Jose Ramirez re-upped with Cleveland. And
Yeah.
so Joey commented on that. He's like, remembering Manoah Kirk were the sticking points with the J Ram trade. If we could only take a mulligan. Yeah.
Yeah, I would take
I mean,
a
Manoah was in the
team
midst
with,
of a Cy Young nomination year. I
yeah.
mean, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, hindsight is 2020, but yeah, I would take Jose Ramirez with Chris Beck behind the plate right
Yeah.
about now. That's for
Give our
sure.
give our boy Beck a job. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, Manoa though, that's the sort of like when we say that this front office can't like develop young players, I don't know what to say. Like how does Manoa score or factor
Yeah.
into that report card? You know, because like on the one hand, fuck that looked good. And on
Hmm.
the other hand, is it their fault that it fucking burned down?
I
You
don't
know,
know.
if
We
it's
sure. I will remind you that both you and I said that our report card on Atkins Shapiro is going to be based around how Alek Manoah turns out. Obviously, neither of us are all that glowing reviewers of the Atkins regime at this point. But
So
man, did it ever go in like literally the worst possible way it could have went.
yeah, I mean, and I think like I forget that we even felt that strongly, and I think
Mm-hmm.
rightly so that we did. But I've like moved on from Manoa and I've moved
I
on
think
from the
most of us
Atkins
have.
era.
Yeah.
So like I think that's kind of why I'm just like over it completely. I'm like, oh yeah,
I put all
like
my hope on Tiedemann, and now I've moved on from Tiedemann too. Now I'm like, train Tiedemann if we can get if we
yeah.
can get Springer's numbers off the books, let's do it. Like,
But I mean, like you said, Manoa's coming off of like what second or third in Cy Young votes
hmm
season.
yeah,
He was gonna be free on our payroll for
eight hundred
another
thousand
half a
dollars,
decade.
another
So
under
like
three
there was
ERA. Yeah,
I mean, talk about if we give Vladdy the money, we won't have money for anything else. If we had to traded away Manoa for Jose Ramirez and then had to pay him as a long-term thing, like that just from like a I mean, yes, of course, crystal ball, you see into the future, Alek Manoa becomes what he becomes, sell high on the guy while he's at his highest for sure. But like the fan base also would have lost their mind,
yes,
right? Like
yes,
there would have been Jose Ramirez is awesome, but the love for Manoa, whatever 2021 or
yeah,
2022, whatever it was fucking
yeah,
like he was the next Uncrustables guy, you know? Like it was
yeah.
like he was he was our next Roy Halladay. Like it was just, you know, he was our but he turned out to be Nate Pearson. And
Oh man, let's move on. It's
let's
making me
move
sad.
on. All right. Sure. Sure.
Okay, this is our last Patreon before we get to YouTube comments. This is from Johnny Eaton. He says, and this is about the Juan Soto rumors to Toronto.
Mhm.
He goes, okay, so this is boring accountant stuff, but MLB cities ordered from the highest to lowest total tax rate. Toronto,
This is a
53.53%. New
really
York,
good post, by the way.
yes, it is. New York, so Yankees, Mets, 51.78% tax. Philadelphia, 51.59%. So Toronto is the highest tax rate, but it is very, very close to New York, to Philly. California teams, so Dodgers, Angels, Padres, Giants, Athletics, 50.3%. So there's some mega, mega spenders in there. Washington, D.C., Nationals, 47.75%. I'm not saying that there's not a difference between 1%, 2%, 3 or 4% more tax, obviously, but it's maybe not quite the divide that some of us Canadians view it as, right? So those all are big spending teams, all of them very high tax rates. Now, I'm not going to read all of this, by the way, because he does state every single team, but getting down to the lower part, so Texas, so the Astros and the Rangers, it's 40.07% tax rate. Florida, so the Marlins and the Rays, 37%. And then Washington State, so the Mariners, 37%. So he goes at the end of this, he goes, so they'd have to pay Soto at least 1.75% more than the Yankees or Mets best offer, which isn't that insane. Now, if teams
Yeah.
like the Mariners and the Rangers are involved, it might be more substantial when you come to that final offer.
One thing I wanted to ask Johnny was about the tax rate for the Phillies because he has the Phillies and the Pirates at different tax rates, but they're both in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yes, that's a
So
good
I just wasn't
question.
sure if there was like a city tax that was higher for Philadelphia, like on top of a state tax,
Mm-hmm.
or where these numbers came from. But so Johnny, if you could get back to me on that, just because I'm not questioning that you're wrong or made a mistake. There just is interesting wrinkles sometimes, and I'm just curious
Yes,
as to what this
that
is.
is
So,
interesting. So Pirates, Pennsylvania, 40.1 or no, 41% tax is what it would be,
mhm,
which is substantially lower than the Phillies
Phillies.
51% tax. So
So just clarify that for me if you could. That's the only question I had. I'm interested.
Thanks, Johnny. I love that we're always like, ground screw, do the work for
Do
us,
the work.
please.
Thanks, Johnny.
Please. Okay, going to YouTube. So we're gonna get to as many of these as possible. I know we're getting long in the tooth here, but we are gonna try and get to what we can. John B says, "I'd rather push for the Mets, Pete Alonso for 200 million, 225 million to get the deal
I see
done
that,
and
eh?
move Vladdy to third." He's talking about Soto rumors to the Blue Jays there. I mean, Pete Alonso, 30 years old, not sure what the term would need to be. Is he another George Springer where you got to go that extra year, 6 years, take him to 36, 200 million? That kind of breaks down to a little over 30 a year. I don't know.
Yeah, Pete Alonso, eh? Like
It
he
would it would be
added
cool to have a real home run hitter on this team.
he added some dollars to his off season with this playoff run. Um,
Yeah, he did. He has come
do you
up big.
do you think on a year by year basis you could have Pete and Vladdy for less than just Juan Soto?
No. I'm saying
No.
no because I actually this is perfect because we will get into. I'm gonna remind me I got to double back on a question, but this leads into the next question really well
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Uh, this is from Warloo. He goes, I don't get it. Vlad is at most 10% less of a player than Soto.
I hate this comment.
I would agree with this. Yet y'all are willing to give him twice as much as Vlad, which I'm not sure when we said that. We kind of spent the whole show last show talking about how we hope that the Blue Jays don't get caught in this big Juan Soto hype thing. But nonetheless, we'll leave that comment alone.
Mm-hmm.
Since 2021, Soto will walk 60 more times and Vlad will get 30 more hits. Take your pick. But stop the Vlad disrespect. Again, I'm not sure when we disrespected Vlad, but fair comment. Imagine if he said he didn't want to be a Blue Jay, and that would suck. If Vladimir Guerrero Jr. came out and was just like, you know what, guys, this is my last year with Toronto. I wish you all the best, but I don't want to be a Blue Jay. That would hurt. That would suck. And I do
Mm-hmm.
agree with Warloo that, you know what, Vladdy probably doesn't get the credit he deserves. I don't think Vladdy even is going to be extended until at least Juan Soto's free agency is over with because Vladdy is going to look at Soto's deal and say, listen, I'm a somewhat comparable player here. I want if Juan Soto gets signed for 400 million, Vladdy is for sure making 330. For sure, he's probably doing that anyways. So if that's the case, then your question of do you think we can get Pete and Vladdy for the same price as Juan Soto? I don't because I really think that Vladdy's extension is going to really coincide with the number Soto gets.
I'm still just hung up on the idea that Juan Soto is no more than 10% better than Vlad, which you agree with? I, I
Maybe
think
like
he's
maybe what
substantially better than Vlad.
15% better. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
Look at
Maybe
Vlad's
there's some
numbers last year. I mean, like I
last
know
year
it's not
as in the
fair.
season that just ended.
Yes, look at 2024 numbers, Vlad,
Okay,
versus
well,
2024
I'm
numbers,
gonna
Soto.
just uh, I'm gonna just address the fact that there's some recency bias there.
Obviously, there's some recency bias. I'm well aware
Okay,
of that. Although Soto has also had some mega years and some more disappointing years over the last 5 years. He's
sure. Okay,
been,
so Juan Soto 7 years in Major League Baseball. Vladdy 6. Vladdy has 819 games played. Juan Soto has 936 games played, so like a little less than a season extra for
yeah.
Soto.
So let's
Vladdy's
look
numbers
career
this
numbers.
year,
Let's look career numbers in 2024.
sure. So career numbers, Vladdy batting average 288. Juan Soto batting average for his career. 285. Vlad's OPS for his career, 863. Juan Soto's OPS for his career, 953.
Mm-hmm.
He has an extra 40 home runs than Vladdy on his career. Vladdy has 160, whereas Juan Soto has 201. Um, Career WAR. I'm not the biggest WAR guy, but it's also just hard to compare other guys across positions and whatever. Juan Soto
Yep.
WAR for his career, 36.4. Vladdy, 21 and a half.
Okay.
So Vladdy had uh, that's not entirely fair because again, Juan had the extra year to accrue more war. Sorry, that's a tough sentence to get out. Um, but with Vladdy getting 6.2 this season, even if we say he repeated it again and we just add that to next year so that they're both 7 years into their career, it still only takes him to like 28 war,
Yeah.
whereas Juan Soto's at 36 war. So how many percentage points better is 36 than 28? It's like
Okay. So
25%
10%.
better.
So what? 20%? Do you feel better at 20%? 25?
Yeah, I'm at like 20 to 25% better.
Okay.
But it's tough. Like we are comparing apples to oranges a little bit. Like
Mm-hmm.
Juan Soto plays a different position, but like also if we're just looking at this season, like yeah, Vladdy had a 323 batting average. That's elite. Juan Soto had a 285. I get the point that like Juan Soto's gonna walk more and Vladdy's gonna get more base hits. I hear you there. Juan had 41 home runs this year. Vladdy had 30. So when Juan is hitting the ball, it's being hit more. Like OPS plus for Vladdy, 166. Amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Juan Soto this season, OPS plus 178.
Yeah.
More amazing, right? I mean, but then again, you have to take
By the
into
way,
account,
this
okay,
I
well, he's hit between Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. Like, what numbers would Vladdy put up in that spot? It's hard to
true.
say, right? But
True.
career playoff
This
home runs, I don't know what the numbers are, but Juan Soto has more than Vlad.
yeah.
So I don't know. It's
Yeah.
tough.
And if I like if you're taking this as disrespect towards Vlad, you're really misinterpreting what we're saying here, I think. Like
Yeah,
I love Vladimir Guerrero Jr. so much. I'm so happy he's a Toronto Blue Jay. He exudes
me
a love
too.
of baseball that just flames my flame for baseball, you know? It's fun to watch
Yeah.
kids have fun and exceed and do really well. And I mean 2024, he was one of the only bright spots on this team. Would I like to see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. be a Blue Jay for life? Yes. Would I like it done at market value? I would hope so. I know that we may need to go above market value to lock up anyone long term. And Vladdy has more ties to Canada in this Blue Jays team because he's played here. He grew up
Yeah.
here. You know, he's been developed by this team for years. So hopefully that goes a little bit in him wanting to be here and being prepared to make a deal.
Vladdy OPS plus by season. I just find this is an interesting comparison with Juan Soto when we say like, they've both had up and down seasons. Like Juan Soto really only had that second year, or the last year in Washington when he got traded to the Padres. Like he turned down the Washington extension and then they had to trade him. Like his numbers that year were not the best, but they were still really good. He hit 236 in the second half of the season when he got traded to the Padres that year. So that's like the low point of his career, but still Vladdy OPS plus by year, rookie season 106, 115. He had that big MVP candidate season 167, 133, 116, 166. So how many of those years would you say are great? Half of them?
Yeah.
167, 166 for sure. Those are great seasons. 106, 115, 116. I think like
Those are
pretty
off years.
underwhelming.
Yeah,
And then 133 kind of on the fence. Like he was 16th in MVP votes that year, but like that's a good, not great season. That's like a you're kind of
yeah,
disappointed you gave him 35 million a year for a OPS plus at that, right?
for sure.
Whereas Juan Soto OPS plus by season, his lowest OPS plus of his career, 142.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
That was
Yeah,
as a rookie. Rookie 142, sophomore 142, 217 in the COVID season, 175, 147 was his other like, oh, this year sucks. That was the last year in Washington when he got traded to the Padres midseason. And then the full season with the Padres, 155, and then this year with the Yankees, 178. Like he's just almost can't miss the elite. Like
yeah. So
wakes up is elite. That's Juan Soto. Put that on a t-shirt.
I think that where that plays in with the Vladdy contract is, let's say Juan Soto is 25% better than Vladdy. And we're talking about exceptional players, both of them here.
Yes. Yes. We're splitting hairs at the highest levels for
At the
sure. I
highest
do
level,
acknowledge that.
Juan Soto, just a better player than Vladdy, numbers wise, at this point in his career. You never know
They're the
trajectory,
same age.
injuries, how things play into
Sure.
this.
Mm-hmm.
Apologies, by the way, my headphones died here, so we're going to limp through the last few questions, and my apologies if there's an echo, but
I think you're good, but who knows? They might be complaining about my keyboard more than your echo. So,
yes, just don't be typing while I'm talking, buddy. No. So let's just do easy math here and say
mhm.
that Vladdy is going to want, if Juan Soto is 25% better than Vlad's going to want 15% less than Juan Soto, right? He's going to want to be he's going to want to bridge that gap more, and they're going to bring up
Yeah.
the Gold Glove. They're going to bring up his ability to play a little third. They're going to, throw everything at this negotiation to try and shorten that gap between the Juan Soto contract and what Vlad is going to get. So let's just say, for easy math, because I'm bad with math, that if Juan Soto gets 400 million,
Sure.
don't yell at me. I know he's probably going to get 450 or five. But I'm just fucking guessing here, guys. All right.
Yeah.
Let's say he gets
Yeah.
400 million. I think it's safe to say Vladdy's going to want 330. So there's going to be that gap there. But just to go back to your comment of, is there a world where Pete Alonso and Vladdy are long-term Blue Jays for a similar price to Juan Soto? I just don't see it.
I guess I'm assuming different numbers. And this is where it's like, who wants to listen to two bozo comedians talk about numbers of a sport that they've never played at that level? In my mind, it's like Vladdy's like
Hundreds.
it's like Vladdy's a $300 million guy. Pete Alonso's like a 2 to 250 guy. And Juan Soto, I feel like it's gonna be fucking 600 million.
Maybe. Maybe. I know that there was a comment. We didn't get to it, but they were basically like, no way. Because we're like, imagine someone actually goes to Otani with him. No one, one of the comments, and I wish I had grabbed the name, but I don't have it
Mhm.
anyways.
Mhm.
They were like, no way he gets what Otani gets. Most likely he goes to the Yankees for like 500 million, but who knows? Maybe he does wind up going to the Jays or the Mets, who are prepared to go 600 million. And you know
This
what?
is the thing, man.
There's
Is like if
probably
the
some reality
Yankees,
to that, but
he's
who
having
knows?
a good postseason with the Yankees right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
The Yankees aren't going to want to let him go. And if the Mets are like, fuck yeah, let's go. Look, we were within whiskers of the World Series. We just lost out to the Dodgers who had Shohei. Well, if we had Juan Soto, that makes X amount of a difference. And now we're right there or whatever. I'm just saying, those two guys or those two teams, it could easily push it and where they overpay for a freak that can be the face of the franchise for the next decade. Like
yeah.
those guys just don't hit free agency often.
Hmm.
They just don't, right? Like I mean, we've had these talks before, like with Joel, about how the nature of the business is going to, sign your Bobby Witt Juniors right away. So the Bobby Witt Juniors don't get to free agency. The Adley Rushmans won't get to free agency.
Mhm.
The Gunnar Hendersons won't get to free agency. So like the idea of building your team through free agency is
It's
just
becoming more and more difficult.
it's becoming more and more difficult. I mean, we just talked about it off the top of the show, right? Like, oh, you missed out on Shohei. Okay, well, who was even left? Cody Bellinger? Okay, he had his own warts. Matt Chapman, is that your second best option? Like, ugh, right?
Yeah.
So, like, sure. So when a guy like this does get there, you go, this might be our next, like, this could set the pace for our franchise for the next decade, or we can miss out and he can go to our rivals for the next decade. Like we're either celebrating for 10 years or we're crying for 10 years.
Hmm.
Is it worth an extra 100 million? Fuck it, sure, go ahead. Right? And I'm just saying that's if they can get it to 600 million, which I don't think is a stretch. When I say him getting more money than Shohei, it's from the Blue Jays. Like that's how the Blue Jays get him into Toronto.
Yeah.
Is he has an offer from the Mets for 600 and the Jays have to go over that because just to match it is going to be like, well, I'd rather just stay a Yankee for a little bit less
Yeah.
money than come to fucking Toronto. You guys are incompetent. I don't know what's going on.
The other thing to keep in mind too is going to be the other
I
thing to
don't
keep
think
in
any
mind.
non-Blue Jays team gives him Shohei money. I want to clarify if I misspoke that last week. This is how I feel. I think the only team that would give him Shohei money would be Toronto, and that's the overpay tax that Toronto has to do. That's
Yeah.
the extra 5 years. That's 600 plus some Bobby Bonilla Canada Day payments for the next 50
That's
years.
exactly what I was just going to bring up is that, you know what, we're not comparing even the Shohei to Juan Soto contract is not ever going to be an apples to apples. I think
Hmm.
Soto gets signed for much more term. I think Juan Soto winds up with some ridiculous, insane 15-year deal where
Yeah,
maybe there's an opt out even after five
sure.
years.
And Manny
Like
Machado.
I
Yeah.
think Soto is going to set it up so that if he exceeds what he's doing right now, he still can go back to free agency at 31, 32. And
Hmm.
if not, then you've got to deal with another 10 years of Juan Soto. So
Yeah,
there's that's my prediction. I don't know if that's actually how it's going to play out. I don't
that's
know
fair.
exactly what Juan Soto wants out of the rest of his baseball career and if he would like to lock up with one team for
Hmm.
the next decade and a half, but we'll see how it plays out. It is going to be interesting. We're going to move on. Dwayne R gives you some love here, Adam. He says, wanted to hit the like button at least twice. Adam's position on Soto was priceless. Just next time, don't hold back. LOL. Share how you really feel. Of course, that's talking about how you basically were like, screw everyone using the Blue Jays as leverage come
Yeah,
out right now and be like, we're not even interested in Juan Soto, which
yeah,
would completely throw Scott Boras and the boys under the bus.
yeah.
And all the speculation about the Blue Jays being that third big time team to drive up the Yankees price isn't going to be able to be used. So that's what Dwayne's talking about there.
We're gonna overpay for the B stars, not for the A stars.
Hmm. The Chuck says it's leverage season. Again, this is about Juan Soto, aka random people in the media claiming the Jays are in on every big name. It happened last year. Two things are true. We have likely the richest ownership group in MLB after the Dodgers and Mets, and agents know it. And also, it's actually really hard to get free agents to come play in Toronto, and they need to pay more for a number of reasons,
Hmm.
like it or not, predominantly being tax reasons, other country, etc. We've seen this story play out now for years. Everybody remembering Bellinger to the Jays. Thank God it didn't happen, by the way. Was never going to happen, he says. The greatest player of all time was totally going to play with the Jays. Never going to happen. The new Ted Williams is coming to Toronto next year. It's never going to happen. So the opposite of toxic positivity there from Chuck, but he does bring up a pretty accurate representation of how the Blue Jays have been used in the past. And I know that Jays fans were probably a little more bitter about it than we should be. It's the business of baseball, but
Hmm.
yeah, I know we're all sick of hearing the Jays tied to guys that we just wind up an article getting written about later about the Jays were so close.
Hmm.
Tall Boy
Yeah.
Speaks. We're ripping through them now. Two more to go. He says, dudes, there were no free agents last year that were any good. If we waited too long on Otani, who was the guy we missed out on that mattered? Seriously, dot, dot, dot. So thank you, Tall Boy Speaks. That's Jeff, our buddy who comes on Log Toss from time to time. So I will say this. There were obviously holes that this front office decided that would be fixed internally going into this 2024 season. Again, cleanup hitter was another one. And was there a lot to choose from on the free agent market? No, there wasn't. Although I am not about to give this free front office a free pass on not bolstering holes that were very apparent in this lineup because the free agent market wasn't what we wanted it to be. There are many different pathways to filling holes, and I know that the Blue Jays farm system wasn't highly reviewed by most of the rest of MLB, and I know that that definitely held back the trade market as well. That lies on the back of Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, though. I'm not saying that they should have went out and got Cody Bellinger, but what I am saying is that I would have liked to have seen at least some creative attempts at filling some of these holes that were apparently the problems after the 2023 playoffs, right? Like I was in Minnesota for that wild card series. It was heartbreaking to watch that team just be completely inept when it came to even scrounging out a couple of runs. Like to lose a 2-0 and a 3-1 game, like it's just really difficult to watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with what he's saying here. You know, would have this team been better if they got Jock Peterson? Maybe. Like there were
Yeah.
JD Martinez. Maybe there were some better options than Justin Turner, which is who they wound up going with. I don't know. You need two to tango. I guess at the end of the day, losing out on Otani, maybe that was the only card they had to play. But that's because they did it to themselves.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the hindsight on Cody Bellinger sways this. Like, did he have the best season this year? No, he didn't. Would he have been better in the outfield than Davis Schneider and the dart throwers? Like,
Yeah.
like, I mean, there was still hype on Bellinger in January and December. Like,
Of course.
it's easy to say now, like, oh, thank God we didn't get him, but we can't pretend that that was not something that we missed out on
Of course.
back then, right? Like you mentioned Jock Peterson, like I don't know the numbers of all these guys off the top of my head, but like, yeah, all of these guys were, there wasn't a podcast or a fan for the Blue Jays that didn't have like an enthusiasm or a way to spin some toxic positivity around, oh yeah, like if we got Soler, like that would be sweet. Like he could work, for a half a dozen different guys, and that's just for hitters. Like there was still pitchers that we didn't pursue in free agency either because we were spending money on Shohei that we didn't spend. So, like we could have fortified our rotation a little bit better with,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, whoever you want, Blake Snell, you know, I
There
don't
were
know, like,
options.
you know, I could go
And
throw a
hindsight
bunch of
is
money at Josh
2020.
Hader.
It's an
Like there
easy
was there
game
was
to play.
ways to upgrade in free agency that, like, yeah, like I do get it that like it wasn't the deepest free agency class, but there was some depth and like yeah, it just, I don't know. Again, being a guy who was like I was in on Cody Bellinger. I wanted him. I thought he'd be a good fit here and I, didn't have the best season in Chicago, but I still think there's an alternate timeline where he has a good year in Toronto and we're laughing and we're
Yeah.
thrilled because lefty bat, the upside's there. Like, could be a
Yeah.
good fit. I don't know. So I don't know. I just think it's a little unfair to be like, oh yeah, we missed out on Shohei, but there was nothing else anyways. Like, fuck off. A little bit, fuck off.
Yeah.
Politely.
Politely. Okay. Final comment is from Derek. He goes, "You guys aren't even Blue Jays fans. All you
Correct.
spew is negativity and not knowledgeable about baseball. You can't even
Hmm.
figure out who doesn't qualify for a qualifying offer." Which I think he I think he just was mad at that point because we literally
Yeah.
spent 7 minutes going over all the free agents who would qualify for a qualifying offer and kind of figuring out which guys would get them. We figured Juan Soto, obviously, Pete Alonso. There's some pitchers
Yeah.
in there. I think we named
Yeah.
seven. I think the only one we were kind of on the fence with was Anthony Santander. And he's a guy who would get a qualifying offer from like 20 teams. And the only reason he might not from Baltimore is that they're like, well, what if he says yes? We don't want to pay
Right.
21.5 million for a
Yeah.
fourth round pick. I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
anyways,
I don't know what
and
the
that's
grief is
fine.
there.
If Derek
Yeah.
feels we're too negative, I get a kick out of we're not Blue Jays fans. Can you imagine if we just woke up one day, Adam, and realized, holy shit, we don't even like this team? Why have we been doing 3 shows a
Yeah.
week for 4 fucking years following this team? Why have I spent 37 my years attaching my wagon to this team? Like,
Yeah. I got to really reconsider that Bringer of Rain shirt that I have hanging in my bedroom. Like,
yeah.
but,
Uh, I don't know. My guess is, and Derek, thanks for your input. I mean, my guess is Derek's like 12 or something. Like
maybe.
I know when I was a kid, I couldn't separate. Like if you were shitting on the front office, right? Like
Yeah.
you're shitting on the whole team,
Yeah.
and we always got mocked sometimes, or at least jokingly poked at by our listeners, you the
Hmm.
grounds crew, that about toxic positivity and how we always have a silver lining on it. So
Hmm.
yeah, 2024 took it out of us. And if we've become too negative,
Hmm.
honestly, do like Stephanie did and challenge us to try and bring some of that toxic positivity out.
Yeah.
If you gotta go watch more positive fucking podcasts, totally understand. Derek, you do you, buddy. Not baseball
I'll say
knowledgeable. I
this.
mean, it felt like at
I
that point he's just like, meh.
Yeah. And you guys have terrible facial hair, and you're
Yes.
probably not even that tall. And Adam probably could spend 35 minutes talking about food on the pre-show. Like, okay, joke's on you, because I can and I did. So join the Patreon if you want to hear my deep thoughts on butter tarts and cuts of steak.
We might not
Um,
know baseball, but boy, do we know tarts.
Boy, do we know tarts. I would say that my 26 favorite Major League Baseball players are all Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah.
And the only thing I root for more than those guys is the team itself.
Hmm.
So, like, hated Kevin Kiermaier when he was a Ray, loved him when he was a Jay, hate his guts in LA.
Yeah.
That rhymes? You should probably put that on a t-shirt
Yeah.
before I forget.
Justin Turner is a Red Sox. He can fuck right off. Justin Turner is a Blue Jay. Love it. No rhyme. I'm
No
not a
rhyme.
rhyming guy.
Still accurate, though. All right.
That is
Then,
mailbag. Thank you so much to all of you who commented or had a question for us. You can always reach out on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. You can join the Patreon. Of course, all of you Patreon members, truly appreciated. Couldn't run the channel without you. You get the Patreon bump and automatically have your question or comment into the mailbag. And if you're on YouTube, well, thanks for following along and feel free to drop your comments below. We'll try to get to them next week. All the best, everybody. We will see you on Friday.